The reflection in the mirror was no longer the same. Michael Stone, 45 years old, CEO of TechMind, one of the largest technology companies in the United States, observed his new appearance with a mixture of fascination and estrangement. His hair, once perfectly trimmed, was now purposely messy. A stubble replaced the impeccable look from magazine covers. Designer clothes gave way to the simple uniform of a fast-track delivery driver, one of the logistics companies that provided services to his company. "You're unrecognizable, sir," commented Jack, his personal assistant for over a decade, adjusting the microscopic camera installed in the uniform cap. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Michael smiled confidently. "Absolutely. How can I create solutions for problems I've never experienced? I need to understand the reality of ordinary people, Jack. It's the only way to truly evolve TechMind." The plan was simple. For a month, Michael would work as a delivery driver, using a fake identity provided by the company's security department. The experience would be documented and later used to improve TechMind's logistics algorithms, as well as serve as material for a major social marketing campaign. "Does Sarah know about your experiment?" asked Jack, referring to Michael's wife. "No, and it's better this way. You know, Sarah, she would try to talk me out of it. Besides, I need her to keep my social calendar normal to avoid raising suspicions." In the mansion's garage, a simple motorcycle awaited him. Michael felt butterflies in his stomach as he started the engine. It had been years since he'd ridden. The feeling of freedom, however, was indescribable. No security, no driver, no commitments, just him and the city. His first delivery was to an office in downtown New York City. While waiting for the elevator, an executive bumped into him without even apologizing. At another time, he would have demanded respect, but now he was just another delivery driver, invisible to the elite's eyes. Deliveries continued throughout the day. Michael carefully observed every detail: the chaotic traffic, impatient customers, poorly signposted establishments. Everything would be used to improve the company's algorithms. At lunchtime, he sat on a park bench with other delivery drivers. He heard their stories, their complaints, their dreams. It was a completely different world from his, but equally fascinating. It was during a delivery late in the afternoon that something strange happened. The package was for a small office in an old commercial building. Upon arrival, he found only an empty room with an envelope on the table. Inside it was a message that chilled his spine. "Welcome to the game, Michael Stone." Stunned, he tucked the envelope in his pocket. How could someone know his true identity? He tried to stay calm, but his mind was already working overtime. He decided to continue the deliveries normally, although now every customer seemed like a potential conspirator. Returning home late at night, he found Sarah in his office, apparently focused on a video conference. She barely noticed his arrival, something that had become common in recent months. Michael went up to the bedroom, exhausted physically and mentally. While showering, he reflected on the day's events. The mysterious message disturbed him, but also intrigued him. He always liked challenges, complex problems to solve. This one, however, seemed different. There was something between the lines of that message that suggested his social experiment had just turned into something much bigger. Lying in bed, Michael accessed his ultra-secure tablet and began researching the address where he had received the mysterious message. To his surprise, the building belonged to a company called Nexus Technologies, which had unsuccessfully attempted a partnership with TechMind the previous year. Sleep was slow to come. Michael had the uncomfortable feeling that his control over the situation, something he always valued, was beginning to slip through his fingers like water. But it was only the first day, he thought. Tomorrow would be different. Little did he know that message was just the beginning of a series of events that would transform his life forever. The next morning dawned cloudy in New York City. Michael woke up before the alarm, his mind still processing the previous day's events. Sarah had already left for her Pilates class, leaving only a brief note on the refrigerator. "Important meeting tonight. Don't wait up for dinner." While preparing, "Here's coffee," he called Jack. I need you to investigate everything about Nexus Technologies, he ordered, his voice betraying unusual urgency, especially the last 6 months of activity. Any problem, sir? I don't know yet, just do it with maximum discretion. On the Fast Track app, his deliveries for the day were already scheduled. The first would be to a luxury condominium in the Upper East Side, an area Michael knew well since he lived around there. The package was a small box addressed to a Marina Adams. Upon arriving at the indicated apartment, he was greeted by a distinguished-looking lady who observed him with peculiar interest. "You're new around here, aren't you?" she asked while signing for receipt. "Yes, ma'am, I started yesterday." "Interesting. Very interesting," she mumbled before closing the door. Inside the elevator, Michael noticed something strange on the delivery receipt. There was a handwritten phone number in the margin of the paper. Intrigued, he tucked the document in his pocket. The next deliveries went normally until one of them took him to a cafe in the city center. The establishment was practically empty, except for a woman sitting in a corner working on her laptop. "Excuse me," said Michael, approaching. "Delivery for Clarissa Mendez?" The woman looked up from the computer and smiled. Michael felt a chill. It was Amanda Torres, his former innovation director, who had resigned 6 months ago after a heated discussion about ethics in artificial intelligence. "Michael Stone," she said, lowering her voice. "Interesting disguise. Please sit down, I think we need to talk." Reluctantly, Michael sat down. Amanda closed the laptop and leaned forward. "You received my message yesterday," she said. "It wasn't a question." "It was you? Why?" "Because you need to know the truth about your own company, Michael. TechMind is no longer what you think it is." At that moment, Michael's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Jack. "Sir, I discovered something about Nexus. The current CEO is Luke Mendez." Michael felt his blood run cold. Luke was his half-brother, the son from his father's first marriage. They hadn't spoken in years, since a family fight over inheritance. "What do you know about Nexus Technologies?" he asked Amanda. "Enough to understand that you're in danger," she replied. "Your neural processing technology, the one you're so proud of, it's being used for something much bigger than simple data analysis." "What are you talking about?" "Remember Project Prometheus, the one you cancelled when I warned about the ethical risks? Well, it was never really cancelled. Sarah made sure of that." The mention of his wife's name made Michael feel like he'd been punched in the stomach. Sarah was TechMind's financial director, but she had always stayed away from technical projects. "That's impossible," he retorted. "Sarah doesn't have the authority to—" "Are you sure?" Amanda interrupted. "When was the last time you really paid attention to the company's financial reports? The signed contracts? The established partnerships?" Michael tried to argue, but the words died in his throat. In recent years, he had delegated more and more responsibilities, blindly trusting his executive team. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked. "I want to help," Amanda replied. "But first you need to understand that you're being watched. Every step, every transaction, every conversation. The social experiment you planned? They knew you would do this. In fact, they were counting on it." "They who?" Amanda looked at her watch. "I can't say anything more here. Find Marina Adams. Your first delivery today. She has something you need to see." Getting up abruptly, Amanda left some bills on the table and headed for the exit. At the door, she turned one last time. "Oh, and Michael, don't trust anyone, not even Jack." Michael remained seated for a few minutes, trying to process everything. His cell phone vibrated again, more deliveries waiting. But now, every address seemed like a possible trap, every customer a potential conspirator. He took out the delivery receipt with the phone number written on it. It was time to make a call to Marina Adams and find out what role she played in this increasingly complex game. With trembling hands, Michael dialed the number written on the delivery receipt. 3 rings later, Marina Adams' serene voice answered. "I was expecting your call, Michael," she said as if talking to an old friend. "Come to my house at 7 p.m. There's something you need to see." "How can I trust you?" "Because I knew your father, Richard, well. In fact, we worked together on the project that gave birth to TechMind." The revelation hit Michael like lightning. His father had never mentioned a Marina Adams, and he knew all the founding members of the company, or at least he thought he did. Before returning to deliveries, Michael decided to take a break. He parked the motorcycle in a square and accessed his special tablet, connecting to TechMind's secure servers. Something Amanda said deeply bothered him. He began to search through the financial reports of the last few months, especially the transfers approved by Sarah. That's when he found something strange, a series of substantial payments to a company called Aurora Consulting. He had never heard of it, but the transfers were monthly and growing. He tried to access more details, but his login was suddenly blocked. His cell phone rang. It was Sarah. "Michael, where are you?" Her voice sounded tense, something rare in his always so controlled wife. "Working." "Why?" "We need to talk. It's about the company. Something unexpected happened." "I'm busy now, Sarah. Can we talk tonight?" "No." "Michael, this is urgent. The board is questioning some of your decisions. Luke has filed a lawsuit alleging mismanagement." "Luke? Since when does my half-brother have anything to do with TechMind?" "He bought shares through Nexus. Michael, he now owns 15% of the company." The world seemed to spin around Michael. How had he not noticed this happening? How had he allowed Luke, of all people, to infiltrate his company? "Sarah, I need to hang up. I have deliveries to make." "Deliveries? What are you talking about, Michael?" He hung up before she could finish the sentence. His cell phone started vibrating incessantly with messages and calls, but he ignored them all. He needed to think, and he needed to deliver the remaining packages. Now more than ever, he needed to maintain his disguise. The next delivery took him to a law office in Midtown. Upon arriving at the reception, a surprise. His mother, Helen, was coming out of the elevator. She froze when she saw him, even with the disguise. "Michael? What are you doing dressed like that?" "Mom, I can explain." Helen looked around nervously. "Not here. Meet me at the cafe on the corner in 10 minutes. At the cafe, Helen looked older and more tired than Michael remembered. It had been months since he had seen her, since she had moved to Florida claiming she needed some time alone. "You shouldn't be doing this," she said, her voice laden with concern. "Not now." "What are you talking about? What do you know about all this?" Helen sighed deeply. "Your father, he wasn't exactly who you think he was, Michael. TechMind. It was born from a much larger, much more complex project." "What project?" "Project Prometheus," Helen replied, making Michael choke on his coffee. "Yes, the same one your former employee tried to warn you about. Your father originally developed it for the government, but something went wrong. Something that forced him to flee, to start over, to create TechMind as a facade." "A facade for what?" "To hide the true nature of the project. Michael, the technology your father developed, it wasn't just for data processing. It was for control. Control of systems, of information, of people. Why are you telling me this now? Because Luke discovered the truth, and now he wants what he believes is rightfully his, Richard's complete legacy, not just the facade company you inherited." Michael felt the weight of each of his mother's words. Memories from his childhood began to make sense. His father's sudden trips, the mysterious men who frequented their house, the locked servers in the basement. "Marina Adams," he said suddenly. "You know her?" Helen paled. "How did you—" "She sent me a message. I'm meeting her tonight." "Don't go," Helen said, holding her son's hand. "Marina is dangerous. She knows secrets that can destroy everything." "What secrets?" "About your father, about me, about you." Helen stood up abruptly. "I need to go. Please, Michael, be careful. There's more at stake here than you can imagine." Before Michael could protest, she had already left the cafe, leaving him with more questions than answers. His cell phone vibrated again, another delivery waiting. But now, each package seemed to carry a hidden meaning, each address a possible piece of the puzzle his life had become. The rest of the afternoon passed like a blur. Michael delivered the last packages mechanically, his mind focused on the meeting he would have with Marina Adams. His mother's words echoed in his head, mixing with Amanda's revelations and Luke's veiled threats. At 6:45 p.m., he parked the motorcycle in front of Marina's condominium. He was still wearing the delivery uniform, but now he felt like an actor in a play he didn't know the script for. The doorman, different from the morning, was another. He observed Michael with suspicion. "Miss Adams is expecting me," said Michael. "She already notified us. You can go up." In the elevator, Michael checked his cell phone one more time. 15 missed calls from Sarah, several messages from Jack, and an email from the TechMind board calling an extraordinary meeting for the next day. His empire was beginning to crumble, and he still didn't fully understand why. Marina was waiting for him at the apartment door. In the late afternoon light, she looked even more imposing than in the morning. Her eyes, a deep blue, carried the weight of many secrets. "Come." "Hey, Michael, or would you prefer I call you Peter Smith, your delivery driver name?" The apartment was a curious mixture of antiquity and technology. On the walls, black and white photos shared space with computer screens displaying complex graphs and codes. In one of the photos, Michael recognized his father, younger, next to Marina and other people in a laboratory. "Would you like some coffee?" Marina offered, guiding him to a modern living room. "I prefer answers." Marina smiled. "Just like your father. Richard was also that direct." She walked to a bookshelf and took out an old folder. "Do you know why your father started TechMind?" "To revolutionize the technology market," Michael answered automatically, repeating the story he had always heard. "No," Marina shook her head. "He created TechMind to hide, to protect you and your mother, to bury Project Prometheus so deeply that no one would ever find it." She opened the folder, revealing documents yellowed by time. Michael recognized his father's handwriting on some notes. Project Prometheus wasn't just a computer program, Michael. It was a way to manipulate digital reality. Alter records, modify transactions, rewrite the truth. Your father initially developed it for the government, but when he realized the true purpose— What purpose? Total control. Absolute surveillance. The ability to rewrite not just data, but entire lives. Michael sat down, feeling the weight of the revelations. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because the project is active again. Someone found the original codes on TechMind servers and perfected them, and they're using this technology exactly as your father feared." "Luke, your half-brother is just a piece of the puzzle. The real mind behind all this is someone much closer to you." At that moment, Michael's cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a headline from a news portal. "TechMind under investigation. CEO Michael Stone accused of financial fraud." "It's begun," said Marina, not seeming surprised. "They're using Prometheus against you, Michael. Every digital record, every transaction, every email, everything can be altered, manipulated, rewritten. How can I fight against something like this?" Marina stood up and walked to a painting on the wall. Behind it was a safe. She opened it and took out an old pen drive. "Your father left this with me before he left. He said one day you would need it." She handed the device to Michael. "Here is the original Prometheus code with a backdoor your father programmed. It's the only way to expose the truth." Michael took the pen drive with trembling hands. "Why did my father never tell me about this? About you?" "To protect you. Richard knew that the less you knew, the safer you would be. But now—" Marina looked out the window, where the sun was setting over New York City. "Now you need to know everything, including about your mother." "What about my mother?" "Helen wasn't just Richard's wife. She was one of the main programmers of Project Prometheus. In fact, it was she who discovered how the project could be used to—" A noise at the door interrupted the conversation. Marina froze. "Did you come? Alone?" "Yes, why?" "Because someone is trying to enter the apartment." Marina moved quickly to her laptop. "They found us. Quick, take the flash drive and leave through the service stairs. Don't trust anyone, Michael. Not even—" The living room door opened before she could finish her sentence. And there, standing in the doorway, was Sarah. Sarah looked different. It wasn't just her posture, or the way her eyes scanned the room with calculated precision. It was something deeper, as if a mask had finally fallen. "So this is where you're hiding, Marina," said Sarah, her voice carrying a familiarity that Michael had never noticed before. "After all these years." Marina remained calm, her fingers discreetly typing something on the laptop. "Sarah, or should I call you Dr. Mendez, still using your first husband's surname?" Michael looked from one to the other, stunned. "You know each other?" "Oh, darling," Sarah smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "There are so many things you don't know. For example, that before being your wife I was married to Luke, or that I worked on the original Prometheus project alongside Marina and your mother." The revelation hit Michael like a punch to the gut. 10 years of marriage, and Sarah had never mentioned this connection to his half-brother or to his father's project. "Why?" was all he could ask. "Power, Michael. It's always been about power." Sarah walked around the room, her heels echoing on the wooden floor. "Your father stole Prometheus from us, altered the codes, hid the true version, and built an empire based on a lie." "Richard didn't steal anything," Marina intervened. "He protected the world from people like you who only see Prometheus as a tool for control." Sarah laughed, a cold and calculated sound. "Protected? He destroyed years of research, ruined careers, forced brilliant people into obscurity. But now," she pulled a tablet from her pocket, "now, we have control again." On the tablet screen, numbers began to move. Michael recognized the data. It was TechBrain's stock plummeting in real time. "What have you done?" "Just exposed the truth, darling. Or rather, created a new truth. That's what Prometheus does. It rewrites digital reality. Right now your accounts are being investigated for fraud. Your emails reveal corruption schemes. Your reputation—" She made a dismissive gesture. "Well, let's say you're no longer the tech genius everyone admired." Michael felt the weight of the flash drive in his pocket, the only evidence that could expose the true conspiracy. "Was it you who planned all this? The social experiment, the deliveries, the messages?" "Actually, you did exactly what we expected. So predictable, Michael. Always wanting to prove you understand the real world, always trying to be the hero," Sarah approached him. "But you never realized you were surrounded by people much smarter than you." "Like your own mother," Marina completed, still typing furiously on her laptop. "Helen?" Michael could barely process this latest revelation. "Your mother didn't go to England to rest, Michael," Sarah explained. "She's there coordinating the next phase of the project, the international version of Prometheus." "But she warned me about you, about Luke. She manipulated you as she always has. Helen is a master at that. Why do you think your father chose her as a partner?" "It wasn't for love, darling. It was because she was the best programmer on the original project." A sharp beep sounded from Marina's laptop. Her eyes lit up for a moment. "It's over, Sarah," she said, pressing enter forcefully. "I just sent all the evidence to secure servers in 5 different countries. Emails, records, the original Prometheus code, everything." Sarah's smile faltered for the first time. "Impossible. The system is impenetrable." "Not for those who helped create it," Marina replied. "Richard wasn't the only one with a contingency plan." Sarah pulled out a cell phone and started making frantic calls. Outside the apartment, sounds of footsteps approached. "Michael," Marina called urgently. "The service stairs, now." He hesitated, looking at Sarah, the woman he had loved for a decade who now revealed herself to be a complete stranger. "It's going to be okay," she said, but now her voice trembled slightly. "We can talk about this. There's still time to fix." "Fix what?" Michael interrupted. "Our entire life was a lie." At that moment, the door opened again. Luke entered, followed by 2 men in suits. Michael recognized one of them. He was a member of TechBrain's board. "Little brother," Luke smiled. "What an interesting family reunion." Michael looked at Marina, who nodded discreetly. In a quick movement, he ran for the service stairs. Behind him, voices mingled in a confusion of orders and threats. As he descended the steps 2 at a time, his cell phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Find Amanda Torres. She has the key to decode the flash drive. M." Night had fallen over New York when Michael finally stopped running. Still dressed as a delivery man, he easily blended into the crowd on Fifth Avenue. His cell phone was turned off. He knew they could track him. The flash drive weighed in his pocket like lead, carrying secrets that now seemed too big to comprehend. He needed to find Amanda Torres, but had no idea where to look. His last contact with her had been at the cafe hours ago, in a life that now seemed to belong to someone else. He walked to a discreet internet cafe, one of those that still survived in the smartphone era. He needed a computer that couldn't be traced back to him. 15 minutes, he said to the sleepy attendant, paying in cash. Sitting in front of the old computer, he accessed an alternative email he had maintained for years, more out of habit than necessity. To his surprise, there was an unread message from Amanda sent just 10 minutes ago. New York Public Library, Rare Books section. Look for the book Foundations of Quantum Computing, A.T. Michael knew the library well. It was just a few blocks away. He looked at the clock. 7:45 p.m. The library would close at 8 p.m. He needed to run. On the way, his mind was racing with the revelations of the last few hours. The mysterious message troubled him, but also intrigued him. He had always liked challenges, complex problems to solve. This one, however, seemed different. There was something between the lines of that message that suggested his social experiment had just turned into something much bigger. The library was almost empty when he arrived. An employee was already starting to organize the tables for closing. "Sorry," she said when she saw him. "We're closing." Michael showed the deliveryman badge. "I have an urgent delivery for Dr. Torres. She's waiting for me in the rare books section." The employee hesitated for a moment but nodded. 5 minutes. The rare books section was on the second floor. Among the silent shelves, Michael searched for the book mentioned in the email. He found it exactly where it should be, but when he tried to remove it, he realized it was stuck. He pulled harder, and a soft click revealed a hidden compartment in the shelf. Inside was an old notebook and a handwritten note. "Michael, if you're reading this, Marina managed to give you the original flash drive. This notebook is your father's. He left it with me before he disappeared. It's specifically configured to decode the Prometheus files. I can't meet you in person. It's not safe. But there's something you need to know. Project Prometheus wasn't just a data manipulation program. It was a gateway to something much bigger. Turn on the notebook. The password is the date of your first programming project, the one you showed your father when you were 12. Be careful with Helen. She's not in England." Amanda. With trembling hands, Michael turned on the notebook. The familiar blue screen flashed, asking for a password. He smiled slightly. Of course, he remembered that date. It was when he decided to follow in his father's footsteps in programming. As he typed in the numbers, he heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, he hid the note in his pocket. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness between the shelves. "We're closing now," announced the employee's voice. "Just a moment," Michael replied, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The notebook screen lit up, revealing an interface he had never seen before. Lines of code in an unknown language filled the screen. But something about them seemed strangely familiar. A video file was flashing in the corner of the screen. The file name made his heart stop. "For Michael, if something happens to me." It was his father. He connected a headphone and clicked on the file. The image of Richard Stone filled the screen, younger than in his last memories, but with the same intelligent and concerned eyes that Michael had inherited. "Son," the recording began, "if you're watching this, it means my suspicions were right. Prometheus is back and you're in danger. There's something you need to know about your mother, about Sarah, and about your true inheritance. What you know as tech brain is just the surface. The real company, the true legacy, is hidden in a place that only you can find. Look in the place where you used to hide as a child, where you showed me your first program. There you'll find—" The screen suddenly went black. The battery had died. "Sir?" The employee was now beside him. "I need to close." Michael put the notebook in his delivery backpack, his heart racing. The place where he used to hide, his father's old office in the country house in upstate New York. That's where he needed to go. As he left the library, he noticed a black car parked across the street. Inside, a familiar figure was watching, Joseph, his personal assistant. But now, Michael no longer knew who to trust. The journey to upstate New York had never seemed so long. Michael was driving a rented motorcycle, the delivery uniform exchanged for simple clothes bought at a department store. His father's notebook and the flash drive were safe in his backpack, along with some basic provisions. The dawn was breaking when he finally saw the familiar outlines of the country house. So many happy memories lived there, now tainted by doubt and betrayal. He parked the motorcycle at a safe distance and approached on foot, observing every detail. The house seemed abandoned, exactly as it should be. His parents hadn't visited it in years. Or at least that's what he thought. Recent tire marks at the dirt entrance indicated that someone had been there in the last few days. Using the spare key hidden under a fake rock, a hiding place that only he and his father knew about, Michael entered. The smell of mold and abandonment was strong, but something else caught his attention. Coffee. Someone had made coffee recently. Cautiously, he moved through the house until he reached the office. The door was locked, but he knew exactly where to find the key. Inside the Chinese vase in the hallway, another secret shared only with his father. The office remained virtually identical to his childhood memories. The large solid wood desk, the shelves crammed with books, the Persian rug worn by time. He went to the corner where he used to hide as a child, behind a fake bookshelf that his father had installed especially for him. The space seemed smaller now, but it was there, the small secret compartment where, at 12 years old, he had set up his first programming office, as he called it back then. It was there that he showed his father his first program, a simple guessing game he had created after weeks of studying on his own. Feeling. The walls of the compartment, his fingers found an irregularity. He pressed the spot and a panel opened, revealing a digital safe. The password, the same date he had used on the notebook, his first programming project. Inside the safe was an old folder and a modified tablet, unlike anything he had ever seen. When he turned it on, a message appeared on the screen. Prometheus System V1.0, restricted access. Michael connected the flash drive that Marina had given him. Immediately, files began to decompress on the screen. Documents, photos, videos. The entire history of Project Prometheus was revealed before him. "I knew you would come." The voice made him freeze. He turned slowly to find Helen, his mother, standing in the office doorway. "You weren't in England," he said, more a statement than a question. "No. I was waiting for you to discover the truth." Helen entered the office, her steps soft on the old rug. "Your father hid everything here because he knew it would be the last place they'd look. Too obvious a hiding place." "Why, Mom? Why all this manipulation?" Helen sat in the old leather armchair. For a moment, she looked very tired. "Because Prometheus was never just a project, Michael. It was a way to protect people from what's coming. Your father understood that too late. And Sarah, Luke, they want to use the project for control, for power. They are pawns in a much bigger game." Helen stood up and walked to the bookshelf, pulling a specific book. Another secret compartment opened. The real Prometheus isn't what they think. It's not about manipulating data or controlling systems. It's about predicting the future. "What do you mean?" "The algorithm your father developed. It doesn't just process information, it identifies patterns, trends, possibilities. With enough data, it can predict events with frightening accuracy. Wars, economic crises, climate changes. Is that why Sarah and Luke want it so badly? They can't even imagine what the system is really capable of." Helen took an old hard drive from the compartment. "Here is the true key to Prometheus. Your father divided it into parts. The flash drive that Marina gave you, Amanda's notebook, this drive. Each piece is necessary to activate the complete system." "And why are you telling me this now?" "Because Sarah discovered more than she should have. The attack on TechBrain is just the beginning. She and Luke plan to use an incomplete version of Prometheus to manipulate global markets, influence elections, rewrite the world's digital history." Michael looked at the tablet in his hands, then at his mother. "You're not telling me everything." Helen smiled sadly. "No, I'm not. There are things you're not ready to know yet. About your father. About me. About who you really are." A noise downstairs interrupted the conversation. Multiple footsteps echoed through the house. "They've found us," Helen said, surprisingly calm. "Michael, take the drive and the tablet. There's a secret passage behind that bookshelf that leads to the basement. From there you can reach the back garage. And you? I'll delay them. I have my own cards up my sleeve." She approached and for the first time in years hugged her son tightly. "Find Amanda. She knows the next step." Michael hesitated for a moment, but the footsteps were approaching. With a heavy heart, he entered the secret passage. Before the EU bookshelf closed, he heard his mother murmur, "Your father would be proud." The secret passage was narrow and damp, illuminated only by the dim light of the tablet Michael was carrying. His footsteps echoed softly as he descended a metal staircase that seemed endless. Above, muffled voices indicated that the house was being searched. He finally reached the basement, a surprisingly spacious and organized area. Unlike the rest of the house, this environment seemed to have been used recently. On the walls, turned-off monitors formed a technological mosaic. Old servers hummed softly in a corner, lights blinking regularly. "Welcome to the true heart of Prometheus," said a familiar voice. Michael turned quickly. Amanda Torres was sitting in front of a workstation, her fingers dancing over a keyboard. "How? Your mother warned me you'd come," she explained, without taking her eyes off the screen. "Actually, Prometheus predicted you'd arrive at exactly 4:47 a.m. It's 4:48 now." Michael looked at his watch, astonished. "The system can really predict the future?" "Not exactly. It analyzes patterns, billions of variables, and calculates probabilities with frightening accuracy. Your father discovered this by accident when he was developing a financial market prediction algorithm." Amanda stood up and connected the tablet Michael was carrying to one of the servers. "The drive Helen gave you. Can I see it?" While Amanda worked, Michael explored the environment. On a side table, he found old photos. His father with a team of scientists, all very young. He recognized faces: Helen, Marina, Amanda, and Sarah. "She was brilliant," Amanda commented, noticing his interest in the photo. "Sarah was our neural network specialist. She was the one who developed the learning core of Prometheus." "What went wrong?" "Power. Ambition. The usual." Amanda sighed. When your father realized the true potential of the system, he wanted to use it to benefit humanity, predict natural disasters, economic crises, epidemics, but others had different plans. The monitors began to light up one by one. Codes and graphs filled the screens, forming complex patterns that converged into a single central visualization. "My God," Amanda whispered. "It's all here. Everything your father predicted." Michael approached the screens. Graphs showed global trends, inflection points in historical events, patterns that repeated through the years. It was like seeing the DNA of history itself unfolding before his eyes. "Prometheus doesn't just predict events," Amanda explained. "It identifies the exact points where small changes can alter the course of history. Your father called these divergence points. And Sarah wants to use this to rewrite reality, not just digitally, but for real. By manipulating these divergence points, it's possible to alter the course of future events." A red alert flashed on one of the screens. Amanda typed rapidly. "They're trying to hack into the system," she said. "Sarah must have activated her version of Prometheus." "There's more than one version?" "Your father fragmented the original system into several parts, precisely to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. What Sarah has is an incomplete copy, but still dangerous." More alerts began to sound. On the screens, the patterns distorted, as if two forces were fighting for control of the digital reality. "Michael," Amanda called urgently, "there's something you need to see, something about your true role in all this." She opened a protected file. It was a video, another record left by his father. "Son," the recording began, "if you're seeing this, it means Prometheus is active again. There's something you need to know. You're not just my son. You're part of the system." Michael felt his blood run cold. "When you were born," Richard continued in the video, "we implemented a specific genetic sequence in your DNA, a biological Key that can completely activate or deactivate Prometheus. You are the human switch we designed to ensure the system would never be used for evil. That's why Sarah married you, Amanda interjected. She discovered the genetic key. Your entire relationship was planned. Michael staggered, leaning on a table. His entire life, his choices, his marriage, everything had been manipulated, programmed, predicted. A crash above them interrupted the moment of revelation. The house shook with footsteps and voices. "They're coming," said Amanda quickly. "Disconnecting some devices. We need to activate the contingency protocol." "What protocol?" "The one your father created for this exact situation." She handed him a small device. "Your fingerprint, combined with the code from this device, can shut down the entire system. Permanently. And lose everything my father created? Or let Sarah and Luke use it to control the future?" The sound of footsteps approached the basement entrance. It was time to decide. Time seemed to have frozen in the basement as Michael stared at the device in his hands. Each second of hesitation brought his pursuers closer, but the magnitude of the decision he needed to make paralyzed him. "Michael," Amanda urged, "we need to act now." Voices echoed through the secret passage duct. Among them, Michael recognized Sarah and Luke. "Wait," he said, an idea forming in his mind. "What if we used Prometheus one last time to understand the consequences of each choice?" Amanda hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, initiating a simulation. The screens around them lit up with new patterns, showing two divergent timelines. "If we keep the system active," Amanda explained, pointing to one of the projections, "Sarah and Luke will eventually gain control. Even if we fight, they have resources, influence. And if we shut it down?" The second timeline unfolded before them. A different future, but not necessarily better. "We'll lose everything," Amanda said. "Not just Prometheus, but all the knowledge your father accumulated. Decades of research, predictions that could save lives." A loud bang on the basement door interrupted the analysis. Sarah's voice sounded clear. "Michael, honey, we need to talk." He looked at Amanda, who shook her head in warning. "You don't have to do this," Sarah continued. "Think carefully. With Prometheus, we can rewrite everything. Your mistakes, my lies, and we can start over." "As a happy couple manipulated by algorithms?" Michael replied bitterly. "As partners," Sarah retorted. "You think only I lied. Your father, your mother, Marina, they all manipulated you since birth. At least I'm being honest now." Michael looked again at the screens, at the possible futures unfolding in lines of code. It was then that he noticed something strange. "Amanda," he called, pointing to a recurring pattern. "What's this?" She approached, frowning. It's a loop. The system is showing that regardless of the choice, some events are inevitable." "What events?" Before she could answer, the basement door shuddered with another impact. Luke's voice joined Sarah's. "Be reasonable, little brother. You really think you can fight this? Prometheus predicted every move you'd make since before you were born." "He's lying," Amanda said. "The system can't predict everything. Your father made sure of that when he inserted the human factor. You." Michael studied the device in his hands. His fingerprint, his DNA, his choice. For the first time since this madness began, he felt he truly had control over something. "Helen?" he called out loudly. "I know you're there too." A moment of silence. Then his mother's voice. "Yes, son. Why? Why turn me into a human key?" "To protect you," Helen answered. "To give you the power of choice that no algorithm could predict." Michael turned his attention back to the screens. The patterns continued moving, showing possibilities, probabilities, potential destinies. Amidst the chaos of information, a detail caught his attention. "Amanda," he said softly, "look at this. In the timeline where we keep the system, there's a third option we weren't seeing." She followed his gaze, her eyes widening in understanding. "The transfer protocol. Of course, your father didn't just divide the system. He created a way to—" The door exploded before she could finish. Sarah, Luke, and Helen entered, followed by armed men. The air in the basement grew dense with tension. "It's over," Sarah declared, extending her hand. "The device, please." Michael looked at each face present. Sarah, the woman he had loved, now a stranger consumed by ambition. Luke, the half-brother, he never really knew. Helen, his mother, a brilliant scientist who had transformed him into something more than human. Amanda, loyal to his father's ideals to the end. "You're right about one thing, Sarah," he said, taking a step towards the central servers. "It's over." His fingers moved quickly over a nearby keyboard, initiating a sequence that no one expected. On the main screen, a new pattern began to form. "No!" Sarah shouted, realizing too late what was happening. Prometheus had predicted this moment, and Michael finally understood his true purpose. The Prometheus screens pulsed with a bluish light, reflecting on the tense faces of those present. The code Michael had just initiated wasn't for destruction, nor surrender. It was something his father had hidden between the lines of the system itself, waiting for the moment when his son would finally understand. "What have you done?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling for the first time. "What my father always planned," Michael replied, watching the patterns reorganize on the screens. Prometheus was never meant to predict or control the future. It was a test. Amanda smiled, understanding. "A test of humanity." "Exactly," Michael confirmed. "Every line of code, every prediction, every choice, everything was designed to bring us to this moment, to force us to face our own ambitions." Helen stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Richard, he always knew this would happen. On the screens, the system began to transform. It wasn't being destroyed, but rebuilt. The prediction and control algorithms gave way to something different, a neural network that learned from the ethics of human choices, not from the coldness of data. The true purpose of Prometheus, Michael continued, wasn't to give power to whoever controlled it, but to teach a lesson about the danger of that very power. Luke laughed bitterly. "And you expect us to believe that? That all this power, all this technology was just a moral lesson?" "No," Michael replied. "I expect you to see for yourself." With a final command, the screens changed. Now they showed records, emails, conversations, the entire conspiracy that Sarah and Luke had built to take control of TechBrain and Prometheus. "You can't prove any of this," Sarah challenged, but her voice betrayed uncertainty. "I don't need to prove it," Michael said. "The system is doing that now in real time. Every manipulation you made is being reversed, every lie exposed. Not to destroy you, but to show the truth." Amanda approached the main servers. "The transfer protocol, it's not just exposing the truth, it's transforming the system itself." "Into what?" Helen asked, fascinated. "Into something I don't fully understand," Michael admitted. "But I think my father wanted Prometheus to evolve beyond our human limitations, our petty ambitions." The guards' weapons lowered slowly as everyone watched in wonder at the transformation happening on the screens. The system wasn't just exposing truths, it was building bridges, connecting people, undoing misunderstandings. Sarah took a step towards Michael, her eyes fixed on the screens. "Our entire marriage, was it really a lie?" "Not entirely," he answered softly. "I think we lost ourselves somewhere between truth and ambition." Luke approached too, his posture changing. "What happens now?" "Now," Michael said, "we do what my father always wanted. We use this technology to unite people, not to control them." Helen touched her son's arm. "Richard would be proud. You understood what even I, after all these years, hadn't grasped." The system continued its transformation, but now in a gentler, more organic way. Apocalyptic predictions gave way to possibilities for cooperation. Manipulations were replaced by genuine connections. TechBrain, Michael said, will be rebuilt with new principles, not as a tool of power, but as a means of bringing people together, of building bridges where there were once walls. Amanda smiled. And Prometheus? It will continue to exist, but in a different form, as a guardian, not a controller. Her system that learns from our humanity, instead of trying to suppress it. Sarah wiped away a tear. "I'm sorry, Michael, for everything." "Me too," he said. But maybe that's the point. Recognizing our mistakes, learning from them, growing. The basement lights flickered one last time and the system stabilized. On the screens, a new interface emerged, more organic, more human. Prometheus had been reborn, not as a tool of prediction and control, but as a mirror of our own capacity for change and growth. Michael looked at the people around him, his family, both by blood and by choice. Each of them had been transformed by this journey just as Prometheus itself had. "So," Luke said, breaking the silence, "what do we do now?" Michael smiled, thinking of his father and the legacy he had truly left. Not a system of control, but a lesson about the power of choice, truth, and redemption. "Now," he answered, "we start over. Together." The morning sun began to penetrate through the small basement windows, illuminating the environment with a new and promising light. Prometheus continued its silent work, no longer predicting futures but helping to build them, one code at a time, one choice at a time, one person at a time. And Michael finally understood that his father had been right from the beginning. The greatest technology ever created wasn't an algorithm or a prediction system, but our own capacity to choose to be better, to forgive, to start anew. The true legacy of Prometheus wasn't the power to control the future, but the wisdom to understand that the future will always belong to those who choose truth, even when it hurts, even when it transforms, even when it forces us to face our own demons. And so, on that morning in Aspen, a new story began.